This morning's talk is a bit of a ramble because what led to the subject at hand was something I learned that I thought was really important. And I shared it with some senior Zen people that I meet with once a week. I'm the teacher of some of them. I'm not the teacher of others, but they're all old hands, all people I respect and that I learned from. So let me start with what I learned. The first thing I learned is that every time you begin to sit zazen, something will itch. In my case, it's my nose. And it's an act of will to sit for 20 minutes without scratching an itch. But it's a good practice. But what set me off on this little journey was I saw what I think is a very important film on Netflix called The Social Dilemma. You may have heard of it. You may have seen it. But it's about senior lieutenants, early employees of Facebook, of Twitter, of Pinterest, of Instagram, of Snapchat, who've all had crises of conscience about what they've built. All of them began by believing that they were building a kind of heavenly device to connect people, to deepen relationships, to keep people in touch over vast distances. And to some degree they did that, and to some degree it's true. But like many things that can get out of your control, they're deeply worried that social media has gotten out of control, out of anyone's control. And they're so worried that they're almost unified in their fear that social media is producing the political and emotional climate for some sort of civil war, some sort of civil violence. So they go on to explain that, of course, it's a business, and that Facebook's genius was to come up with an advertising model. And what they're selling is us. As they point out, if you get something for free on the internet, you are the product. And in this case, what the product is your attention. And they are selling your attention to advertisers in increments of seconds, sometimes for pennies, sometimes for more. They're putting your awareness in the laps of advertisers for which they pay. That process created the biggest, wealthiest business in the history of business. Your attention is monitored by computers that are running sophisticated algorithms, artificial intelligence, which is self-correcting and getting better at what it does. It's getting better at snagging your attention. So for instance, if you haven't looked at your phone in a while, you'll get a little ding and it will say you've just been tagged in a photo, or Julie is going with Brad, or look at the photo someone just sent you. And it looks beneficent, it looks harmless, but what it's designed to do is to keep your attention focused on the phone or the tablet or the computer. And these algorithms are 1 trillion times better than they were in 1960 when they were being developed. And they're so good, they've devised multiple ways of keeping you addicted, and it is an addiction, because what they've tapped in is the inbred evolutionary desire to be a group and to be liked and appreciated by the group. So people will airbrush photos of themselves and fix them up and send them to friends, and other kids who feel that they don't look as good pressed. In fact, since 2010, when social media came onto telephones Preteen suicide is up over 170%, and teen suicide is up somewhere in the range of 80%. So there are serious consequences that attend to plugging into this tap. People needing to be liked by their peer group, wanting to be loved, wanting to be appreciated, not to be excluded. It's why internet bullying is so serious. So the consequence that they fear that's leading towards civil war is that the algorithms identify interest groups, and they ensure that each interest group will see the information that interests it. So if you're an anti-vaxxer, when you turn on Facebook, you're going to see Facebook news about anti-vaccination. And you're going to think that everyone's seeing it. But it's not the case. And if you're a conspiracy theorist, you're going to see conspiracy theories and you're going to think everyone else is seeing it. But it's not the case. So if me and my next door neighbor were to Google the Vietnam War or Google Supreme Court or Amy Barrett, we would get entirely different feeds. And what this has done, of course, has balkanized the entire population, not just of the United States, but worldwide. So worldwide, democratic governments are under stress and fracturings are appearing everywhere. And as each side gets more and more convinced of the rightness of their particular cause, because it's being bolstered by Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat and all these things, it's being fed constantly. It's being fed by Russian bots. It's being fed by wackadoos. And it looks like this common objective source is verifying your particular interest, which is what makes you of value to advertise. And so clients can come and shop for the kind of people they want. And there's another very good documentary called The Big Hack, which explains how Donald Trump was elected, how a firm in England called Cambridge Analytica would come in and buy hundreds of thousands of people who hadn't made up their minds, or they would find black activists, or they would find one group or another, and they would send them information under their nose that would either make them want to stay home or would make them angry and dissentious. They would tell white supremacists about phony Black Lives Matter rallies where horrible things were being said, just to keep things stirred up, make those people sure that they would come to the polls, and they would make sure that the black activist entries about the corruption of the politicians, which might make them stay home. So that's what I learned, and it was quite shocking. And the first thing that they suggest you do, which I did, was turn off all the notifications in your phone and your computer. So instead of it tugging you to say, look at me, you decide when you're going to check your email. So all of my notifications have been silenced, except I have a little tone for my daughter and one or two friends and my agent. That's about it. So my phone is suddenly silent. I'm not seeing banners all the time. I don't have to look at it. And I suddenly realized how I was checking my phone, checking my computer, checking my email. And it's all designed to be in this moment. It's like a fake zazen. Because it's not just for your own good at all. It's to deliver that attention to advertisers. And when you go to check your email, you'll see something. You'll see some ad. You'll see something. You know, Tom Selleck, we'll miss him. He's not, but gee, I didn't know he was dead, and you'll click it. So that's the ramble. That's what I learned, and I was sharing this with my senior group of Zen friends. So at one point, a fellow I know who's quite senior. He has a very well-developed practice. He studied for a long time, and he's a very happy-go-lucky guy, and generally taking me to task for being too intellectual, correctly, I think. He suddenly had an outpouring of despair. And he said, God, I so admire you. I think that you are naive. I don't know where you find the hope. But the fact is, we're screwed. The planet is going to be like this, getting worse for a century. 9 billion people is going to go down to 1 billion somehow, some way, which is maybe the carrying capacity of the Earth. And he just went through a long litany of things that were wrong and things where he had just run out of hope. I was kind of shocked to hear that. I understand it. I felt that way sometime, but he was quite uncharacteristically emotional about it. And I struggled to find something to say that would be of value and of hope and of use. So I practice something I call radical optimism. I call it that because there's nothing that you have to take on faith, because anything that you have to take on faith can be punctured. So radical optimism is based on one sort of unassailable fact, which is that we never know how things are going to turn out. We never know. So given that, if I keep my shoulder to the wheel and push for the things I believe in and stay consistent with my intention, there's a chance things could go my way. It's like buying a lottery ticket. There may be long odds, but there's a chance. And there's no chance if you don't buy a lottery ticket. So I raised that subject, the possibility that we don't know. The other possibility is that all these images and all these narratives occur in the realm of thought. And Zen is about something else. Zen has to do with dropping below thought, dropping below your personality, dropping into the big mind that's always around us, the space that's always around us, the energy that is always prepared to become some other form, some other shape, some other color, some other impulse, some other feeling. The ground level of our awareness. That ground level is not personal. That's not mine. My I is Buddha's I. It's the same. If I don't think so, I've killed the Buddha. I've buried the Buddha. But because I know that my I is Buddha's I, Buddha's alive. All sattvas are alive. And in a world where such beings are alive, anything can happen. And the odds of something good happening are amplified. So the technology for dropping into that state and accessing that state is Zazen. And to do it with the utmost seriousness and the utmost dedication is to allow mind to quiet down and to drop below it. It's like being underwater and watching all the frothiness at the surface. Down deep in the ocean, the temperature doesn't change much. The currents don't change much. It's pretty constant down there in the formless. And in the mind, it's the same thing. In the formless, you're always prepared for the next thought or the next impulse or the next sensation. But it's beyond the personal. And so to go there is a deeply renewing and refreshing and supportive activity. Because There's not much difference between a man or a woman that's run out of hope and a suicide. People commit suicide because they've had a failure of imagination. They can't imagine things changing or getting better. I'm not talking about people who are in intractable terminal pain. That's something else. That's a conscious decision. But I'm talking about people, much younger than myself that go off the Golden Gate Bridge or take their own lives. They've been locked in a narrative loop. And they're seeing the world not as it is, but they're seeing the world through the narrative. And the narrative has no way out of it, doesn't have an exit. And it's so painful that they want to end it. And my feeling has always been that when someone lets go of the rail at the bridge, and as they're falling, the last thing they see is the extraordinary beauty of the horizon and the water and the light twinkling on the hills. And suddenly they're seeing things as it is. It's too late. There was a film made about suicides on the Golden Gate Bridge where they set up a long telescopic camera on one of the Marin County hills. And they watched people pacing back and forth and suddenly flying over the edge. And one man survived the fall, and he said just that. He said, "The moment I let go of the rail, I knew I'd made the worst mistake of my life." And he now dedicates his life to talking to potential suicides. I'm not so worried that everyone I'm talking to is on the verge of suicide, but I am worried about the extent of stress and despair that people are feeling. It's unnatural to be sequestered. I had a cousin who came to visit me yesterday who's postponed her wedding here, hopefully to be on the other side of the pandemic. I did a wedding on my birthday to someone who's here. And there were 6 people, masked, distanced. It's not carefree, even though it's a happy day. It's not carefree. So people are forced to be watchful. They're forced to consider, do we wear masks? How safe are the people I'm visiting? How safe are the people who just visited them? Somebody's got their kids home. How responsible are their kids? It is a stressful time. And so where do you go for resupply? Where do you go for energy and a recommitment and a reinvigoration? I go to big mind. I go beyond my personality. I plug into the universe itself. The spinal telephone is plugged into the universe at the other end. The back of your head opens onto the universe. And what you want is that formless, vital, pregnant energy coursing through you all the time. The energy that is kind of the ground level awareness of the universe. And when you can relax your personal narratives and when you can harmonize your internal awareness with that ground level awareness, it's extremely nourishing and nutritive. So they've found that fake news travels 7 times as fast and as far on the internet as the truth. And so just like in the nightly news, where they have to hook your attention, and the more attention they hook, the bigger their viewership, the more they can charge for their advertisements. So they're going for the broadest mid-level IQ. If you think of the planet, the equator is the biggest circle that you can draw around it. And that's the mean IQ. And as you go higher toward the circles get smaller and smaller. So the people who are interested in Hamlet or the Odyssey are a much smaller number than the people at the equator. But if you're in the mass market business, it's the people at the equator that you have to please. And so you get, if it bleeds, it leads kind of stories. The puppy in the well. And everything is cast in the most combative, horse race, competitive kind of terms. And that's the way we start to frame reality if we're not careful. Because the entire society is organized around making money. That's the Gordian knot of our political system, which no one wants to talk about. I was watching the hearings for Amy Barrett for the Supreme Court today, and there's a senator from Rhode Island, Sheldon Whitehouse, and he was just explaining very clearly how very wealthy forces, he calls them dark money, have put up a war chest of $250 million to get her onto the Supreme Court. And so the people who are actually supporting Donald Trump want the judicial system. They want to own it. They're not going to trust the masses to elect people to put the judges in. They're going to own it, and they're putting out very slick, very expensive ads. And it's probably a fait accompli. And so when they asked him, well, what could we do? He said, the first thing we could do is be transparent. We want to know who $17 million check to get Judge Kavanaugh elected. We want to know who put the $250 million up to get Amy Barrett elected. And if we know that, then we can see the problem, and then we can talk about remedies. And I thought that was thrilling because I've known for years, and I've been involved with clean money campaigns, trying full federal funding of elections so that we elect the legislators. We pay them. And it's illegal for lobbyists to give them money, anyone to give them money, jobs, junkets, speaking tours, so that they work for the people. But I've never really known how to get there because I know that they're not going to take their noses out of the trough, and the Democrats and the Republicans accept money from the same people. They have to. And so it's the interests of those people that pay the most, the 60% of every election, that basically control public policy. And this senator, Sheldon Whitehouse, said, well, the first step is transparency. So once everyone knows, once it's not dark money, once it's illuminated, we have a chance to get control of the problem. So in the same way we have dark money in our own minds, we have veins of wealth that we don't know are there. Wealth is probably the wrong word. We have attachments to power, to getting our own way, to gaming our own lives. Well, I'll just take a little bit every day. I'll give all my drugs to a friend and I'll just have him give me a little. I'll just have one cigarette after lunch. I'll just have one drink after the sun goes below the yardarm. We all have these things. And of course, people with extraordinary means have extraordinary power in a system that's based on money. And this can be another cause of despair. And I think it is a cause of despair. And I think it's one of the contributing factors all over the world where you see democracy under assault is everywhere corporate sector is assuming dominance. Because the corporate sector has the money to buy parliaments, to buy legislators, and little by little the interests of everyday working people become ignored. Life gets tougher for them. Stuff gets more expensive, more regulated, more in accord with what business and the wealthiest people want. And so the consequence is they begin to distrust democracy. So we now have a situation where 9 unelected people on the Supreme Court may decide that it's unreasonable to give people with pre-existing conditions health care, even though it's a 60-30 split in the population. It's not 50-50. 60% of the people support Roe v. Wade. 60% of the people want universal health care and pre-existing conditions. So in a system organized around money, great wealth, and great power, bypasses the legislature to get their own will. Why should their corporations have to worry about the environment? Why can't they dump whatever they want in the water, in the air, in the ground, in the soil? It makes money. It makes sense. It puts people to work. So that's our world, and we have to see it clearly. And we have to figure out some way to move the world in a way in which we stay upright. And if we're going to be of use to people, and that's the part of meditating and zazen that interests me. It's not to win some special heavenly state for myself. It's to make myself more useful to other people, to help this world. Because as things condense, like a dark star cooling and getting denser and denser and denser before it re-explodes, people who see things clearly and are in control of their anger, their envy, their rage, their jealousy, people who are calm and relaxed, are going to be critically important locally, in small instances, in small venues. So that's why I do this. That's why I teach meditation. That's why I try to encourage people that your state of mind is not just your state of mind. Your state of mind is induced by circumstances over which you have no control. But you do have control over your state of mind. You do have control over your intention. You do have control over your posture and where you place that attention. And that it's not serving us to allow Facebook or Twitter or Instagram to snag our attention whenever it wants and to subsume us in a system that's based on bringing forward from us what's best for advertisers and corporations and doing it in a way that we're not even aware of. So I would urge people to film The Social Dilemma on Netflix. But more important, I would urge everybody to take their meditating seriously as the antidote to the kind of manipulation of advertising, snagging your attention, the suppositions that be all you can be, which is another way of saying be something that advertisers can use, to contact your own wild mind, to contact your own authentic, settling the self on the self, Dogen called it. There's this sack of skin, but the host that's inside is not yours. It's not personal. It was before you. It's continuing after. It's shared by animals. It's shared by some plants. It's the ground level of the universe. And we owe it our respect. And our respect means caring for it and not letting it be snagged and put to uses that are for other people. We want to be the boss of everything. And the boss of thing is controlling your awareness and deciding where you put it and protecting it from undue influence, seductions, blandishments, manipulations. And it's very hard because we're surrounded with it. I think I read somewhere that by the time children are 14 or 15, they've seen 1 billion advertisements. And each of those advertisements is a worldview of what men and women should look like, what the social ideals are. And they have both a positive and a negative effect. You don't have a way of dropping below that and realizing that you are plugged directly into the thing that made hummingbirds and dolphins and leopards and Donald Trump. Anything can come out of emptiness. If you don't understand that, you're on the road to being a victim. So maybe that's enough for today. I'm really glad everybody shows up. I'm flattered. Not trying to be a bummer here, but when you think about your awareness being as precious as gold, then you'll have an image of how voraciously people are seeking it. And you might want to guard it. So I'll say the metta prayer. I invite you to join me. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be happy and at peace. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be happy and at peace. May all beings be filled with loving kindness. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be happy and at peace.